Pack your bags, old man. You're done living here. 2 hours after my daughter's wedding, her new husband tried to steal my house. I'm Nathan Sterling, and at 11:15 p.m. on what should have been the happiest night of Rebecca's life, Garrett Stone walked into my study with a notary and those exact words. "Sign this," he said, spreading forged documents across my desk. "Rebecca wants you in assisted living." The papers looked official. The signatures looked real. The threat was crystal clear. But here's what Garrett didn't know about the 72-year-old man he thought he was robbing. I'd spent 45 years as a federal judge, and something about his face was triggering a memory from 15 years ago, a memory of another criminal who thought he was smarter than the law. While Garrett explained his generous plan to steal my $2.8 million estate, I did something that clearly unsettled him. I reached for my pen, and I had him exactly where I wanted him. Want to see how this ends? Hit subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because some wedding nights end with happily ever after, this one ended with handcuffs. Let me back up 6 hours to the most beautiful wedding I'd ever seen, and the most expensive. Rebecca looked radiant in her grandmother's pearl necklace, walking down the aisle of St. Matthew's Episcopal Church toward Garrett Stone, the man who'd swept her off her feet 18 months earlier. 180 guests filled the pews. White roses, 300 of them at $8,200, decorated every surface. The reception at my Georgian mansion in Scarsdale had cost $150,000 total. Garrett had insisted on only the best for Rebecca. I should have questioned that. A trauma nurse's salary and a marketing consultant's income don't typically fund Plaza Hotel level weddings. But Rebecca was glowing, and after losing my wife Eleanor 2 years ago, seeing my daughter happy seemed worth any expense. Garrett fit the part perfectly. 6'2", athletic build, charming smile that won over everyone from my elderly sister Margaret to Rebecca's skeptical college friends. He knew exactly what to say, when to laugh, how to make each person feel special. During the father-daughter dance, Rebecca whispered, "Dad, thank you for giving me away to such a wonderful man." "Just promise me you'll be happy," I told her. How could I not be? Garrett makes everything perfect. Perfect. That word should have been my first warning. The reception flowed seamlessly. Garrett gave a toast that brought tears to half the room, talking about how Rebecca had saved him from a dark past, and how grateful he was to join such an incredible family. He mentioned my distinguished career, my late wife's charitable work, the family traditions he hoped to continue. He'd done his homework. Too well. By 9 p.m., the last guests were saying goodbye. Rebecca and Garrett planned to spend their wedding night at the plaza before flying to Tuscany for their honeymoon. I'd given them $25,000 as a wedding gift. Money Garrett had specifically requested for the Italian trip Rebecca's always dreamed about. Another red flag I'd missed. I was in my study, still wearing my tuxedo, reviewing some congratulatory messages when I heard the front door open. Heavy footsteps crossed the marble foyer, too heavy for Rebecca in her wedding dress. "Nathan?" Garrett's voice echoed from the hallway. "We need to discuss something important." I looked up from my desk. The same 18th century mahogany piece that had been in my family for generations, where I'd reviewed case files that sent criminals to prison for decades. Garrett appeared in the doorway, no longer wearing his tuxedo jacket. His white dress shirt was wrinkled, his bow tie undone. Behind him stood a nervous-looking woman clutching a leather briefcase. "This is Linda Martinez," Garrett said, gesturing to the woman. "She's a notary. We need her services tonight." Something in his tone had changed. The charming wedding guest was gone, replaced by someone colder, more businesslike. "It's past 11 p.m., I said. "Shouldn't you be with your wife?" "Rebecca's resting at the hotel. She had a bit too much champagne." Garrett smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "She's exhausted from all the wedding excitement." The notary shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Stone, perhaps we should do this tomorrow." "No," Garrett cut her off sharply. "Tonight, as discussed." He pulled documents from an envelope and spread them across my desk. Official-looking papers with seals and signatures, formatted like legal property transfers. "What is this?" I asked. "Rebecca's wedding gift to us," Garrett said smoothly. She realized that this house is far too much for you to manage alone, especially at your age. She's concerned about your safety, your health, the burden of maintaining a property this size. I picked up the top document, a power of attorney form, apparently signed by Rebecca, giving Garrett full legal authority over my estate in case of incapacitation or diminished capacity. The signature looked perfect. Too perfect. Rebecca never mentioned any concerns about my living arrangements, I said. She didn't want to hurt your feelings during wedding planning, but now that we're married, we can take proper care of you. Garrett's voice carried that patronizing tone I had heard from countless defense attorneys trying to manipulate elderly witnesses. We found a wonderful assisted living community in White Plains. Private room, excellent care, all your needs met. The notary cleared her throat. Mr. Sterling, if you could review these documents and sign where indicated. I looked at the papers again. Property deed transfers, financial power of attorney, medical decision-making authority, everything needed to strip me of all legal control over my life and assets. And where will you and Rebecca live? I asked. Garrett's smile widened. Someone needs to maintain the family property. We're prepared to take on that responsibility. There it was, the real agenda. My $2.8 million estate, signed over under the guise of caring for an aging father-in-law. But as I studied Garrett's face in the lamplight, something nagged at the back of my mind. Something familiar about the shape of his jaw, the set of his eyes, the way he carried himself. I'd seen that face before, in a context that had nothing to do with wedding receptions or family dinners. You've really thought this through, I said. Every detail, Garrett replied confidently. I reached for my pen and his eyes lit up with anticipation. Then I smiled. That smile changed everything in the room. Garrett's confident expression flickered like a television losing signal. The notary looked between us, sensing tension she couldn't identify. Is there a problem, Nathan? Garrett asked, his voice carrying a slight edge. No problem at all, I said, still holding my pen. Just trying to understand the timeline. Rebecca signed these documents when exactly? This afternoon, before the ceremony. Interesting, because I spent the entire morning with Rebecca getting ready. We had breakfast at 8, photos at 10, hair and makeup until 1 p.m. She was with her bridesmaids from then until the ceremony. Garrett's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She found time between photos. Did she? Because Rebecca's very particular about legal documents, inherited that from her mother, who was a paralegal for 30 years. I tapped the papers with my pen. Eleanor always said Rebecca would read every clause twice before signing anything. People can change, Garrett said. Not Rebecca. She once spent 3 hours reading a gym membership contract. I leaned back in my chair, the same leather chair where I'd presided over federal cases that shaped criminal law. These documents represent complete financial surrender. Rebecca would have called me before signing something this significant. The notary shifted nervously. Mr. Stone, if there are questions about the signatures are fine, Garrett interrupted, but sweat was forming at his hairline despite the cool October air. I picked up my phone. Let's call Rebecca and confirm. She's sleeping. The plaza has excellent room service. I'm sure they can wake her gently. Garrett stepped closer to my desk. Nathan, don't complicate this. Rebecca was very clear about her wishes. Which wishes? To abandon her father to strangers? To give up her inheritance rights? To sign away the house where she learned to ride a bike? Where she brought her prom dates? Where her mother died in hospice care? Sentimental attachment isn't practical. Practical? I stood slowly, my full height still imposing at 72. Son, this house has been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather bought it in 1923. Rebecca's great-grandfather built the garden gazebo where you proposed. I walked to the window overlooking the grounds, where white wedding chairs still dotted the lawn, evidence of the celebration that had ended just hours ago. This estate is worth $2.8 million, I continued, not because of the property value, but because of the memories, the history, the foundation it represents for future generations. Garrett followed me to the window. That's exactly why Rebecca wants us to take care of it. That is it? Because these documents don't transfer the house to Rebecca. They transfer it to you, specifically. Garrett Stone as primary beneficiary. The notary looked up sharply from her briefcase. Mr. Stone, you told me this was a joint spousal transfer. It is, Garrett said quickly. New York state law recognizes. I know New York state law better than most attorneys, I said quietly. I helped write some of it during my tenure on the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. Silence filled the room like smoke from a fire. What did you say? The notary asked. I'm retired federal judge Nathan Sterling, 45 years on the bench, 20 years in district court, 25 in federal appeals. I turned back to Garrett, studying his face more carefully, which means I've spent nearly half a century learning to recognize fraud. Garrett's composure cracked. This isn't fraud. This is family planning. Is it? Because I'm looking at documents that would give you complete control over my assets while providing no protection for my daughter. If something happened to you tomorrow, Rebecca would inherit nothing. The house, the investments, the family trust, all of it would go to... I checked the paperwork. Your emergency contact, someone named Diana Cross. The notary started packing her briefcase. Mr. Stone, you didn't disclose that Mr. Sterling was a federal judge. This creates liability issues I'm not comfortable with. Wait, Garrett said desperately. We had an agreement. Our agreement was for a standard estate transfer between family members, she replied. Not a potential fraud case involving a federal official. Garrett grabbed her arm. You're being paid $500 for an hour's work. I'm leaving. She pulled free and headed for the door. Mr. Sterling, I recommend you have these documents reviewed by independent counsel before signing anything. After she left, Garrett and I stood alone in my study. The grandfather clock ticked loudly in the sudden quiet. You're making this much harder than it needs to be, Garrett said. Am I? Because from where I stand, this looks like elder financial abuse. A federal crime, incidentally, that carries up to 20 years in prison. I'm trying to help you. Help me what? Lose my home? My independence? My family legacy? Garrett's mask was slipping completely now. The charming son-in-law was disappearing, replaced by something harder, more desperate. You're 72 years old, he said bluntly, living alone in a house built for a family. Rebecca worries about you every day. What if you fall? What if you have a medical emergency? What if you can't handle the maintenance? Those are Rebecca's words. Those are reality's words. I walked back to my desk and opened the bottom drawer, pulling out a thick medical file. My latest physical, I said, spreading the papers out. Blood pressure, 120/80, cholesterol, 160. Cognitive assessment, perfect score. Stress test, passed with flying colors. I closed the file. My doctor says I have the health profile of a man 15 years younger. Garrett stared at the medical reports. Doctors can be wrong. Federal judges learn to evaluate evidence objectively, I replied, and the evidence suggests I'm in excellent health, excellent mental condition, and excellent financial shape. My retirement fund generates more than enough to maintain this property and live comfortably for decades. Then why are you really here, Garrett? The question hung in the air like an indictment. Garrett's face cycled through several expressions: surprise, calculation, and something that looked almost like recognition. I told you, he said finally. Rebecca's concerned. Rebecca's in the bridal suite at the plaza, probably wondering where her husband disappeared to on their wedding night. I sat back down at my desk. But you're in my study at midnight trying to steal my house. I'm not stealing anything. What would you call it? Garrett's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his face went pale. Expecting a call? I asked. It's nothing. But something in his reaction triggered another memory fragment. The way he held his phone. The way his accent slipped slightly when he was nervous. The way his whole posture changed when under pressure. I'd seen all of this before, in a courtroom. 15 years ago, Garrett's phone rang again. This time, the caller ID was visible from where I sat. Diana C. Friend of yours? I asked. Business associate. Garrett quickly declined the call. Nothing important. Diana Cross? I said the name slowly, watching his reaction. That's an unusual name for a business contact to be calling at midnight on your wedding night. Garrett's face went rigid. How do you know her last name? Lucky guess. I leaned forward in my chair, though I'm curious why a marketing consultant needs to take business calls during his honeymoon period. You don't understand the pressures of modern business. Don't I? I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a small notebook, a habit from decades of recording case observations. Tell me, Garrett, what marketing firm do you work for again? Stone Consulting Group? Interesting name. Stone, same as your last name. It's my company. Your company. I flipped through the notebook pages. Founded when? 2 years ago. Right around the time you met Rebecca. I found the page I was looking for. Funny thing about being a federal judge, you develop certain investigative instincts. When my daughter started dating someone seriously, I did a little background checking. Garrett's eyes narrowed. That's invasive. That's protective. Stone Consulting Group was incorporated 18 months ago with a $5,000 initial investment. Current reported revenue, 0. Tax filings, none. Business address, a P.O. box in Yonkers. We're a startup. You're a ghost company. I closed the notebook, which raises interesting questions about how you afforded a $150,000 wedding on zero income. Garrett's phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at it involuntarily, and I caught a glimpse of the message preview. Where are you? The timeline? Timeline? I asked. What timeline? Nothing. Garrett pocketed the phone quickly. Nathan, you're overthinking this. Rebecca and I want to take care of you. Why is that so threatening? Because caring adult children discuss major life changes with their parents. They don't ambush them with legal documents at midnight. I stood and walked to my bookshelf, where 45 years of legal references filled floor-to-ceiling shelves. My fingers found a familiar volume. Federal Criminal Code, Section 1294, I said, pulling the book down. Elder financial abuse through deception, coercion, or fraud. I opened to a bookmarked page. Penalties include up to 20 years imprisonment and restitution of all stolen assets. No one's stealing anything, aren't you? I set the book on my desk, open to the relevant statute. Let's examine the elements. First, targeting an individual over 65. I'm 72, so that's satisfied. Second, using false pretenses to gain control of assets. You're claiming Rebecca authorized this transfer, but Rebecca hasn't spoken to me about assisted living ever. Garrett's jaw worked silently. Third, employing deception about the victim's capacity or needs. You're suggesting I'm incapable of managing my affairs, but my medical records say otherwise. I turned the page. Fourth, involving family relationships to establish trust and access. Marriage to the victim's child creates presumed authority and emotional leverage. You're being paranoid. I'm being thorough. 45 years of case law teaches you to recognize patterns. I closed the book and looked directly at Garrett. But there's something else bothering me about this situation. What? Your face? Garrett went very still. I keep feeling like I've seen you before. Not at family dinners or wedding planning meetings. Somewhere else. Somewhere official. I don't know what you mean. Neither do I. Yet. I walked back to my desk and picked up my phone. But I know how to find out. What are you doing? Calling the courthouse security office. They keep photo databases of everyone who's appeared in federal court. Defendants, witnesses, lawyers, family members. I started dialing. Amazing technology. Facial recognition can match photos from 15, 20 years ago. Garrett stepped forward quickly. That's unnecessary. Is it? I paused with my finger over the last digit. Because if you've never been in my courtroom, the search will come back negative. But if you have... And stop! The word came out sharp, commanding, a completely different voice than the charming man who'd married my daughter 6 hours ago. Interesting reaction, I said. Garrett's phone rang again. This time he answered it. Not now, he said tersely. A woman's voice came through clearly. The phone's volume was turned up too high. Garrett, what's taking so long? You said midnight, latest. It's almost 12:30. I could hear every word. I said not now, Diana. But the plan... Garrett ended the call abruptly, his face flushed with anger and something that looked like panic. Plan? I asked quietly. What plan? Nothing. She's worried about the business. At 12:30 a.m. on your wedding night? While you're supposed to be with your bride at the Plaza Hotel? Garrett's hands were shaking now, barely perceptible, but after 45 years of watching defendants under pressure, I recognized the signs. Where is Rebecca right now, Garrett? I told you, the hotel. Call her. She's sleeping. Call her anyway. Nathan, call my daughter, right now, or I'm calling the courthouse, the FBI, and hotel security. I picked up my phone again. Your choice. Garrett stared at me for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried traces of an accent I couldn't quite place. You always were too smart for your own good. The words hit me like a physical blow, not because of what he said, but because of how he said it. I'd heard those exact words before, 15 years ago, in my courtroom, from the defendant's table. The accent was faint, but unmistakable. Eastern European, specifically the same accent I'd heard in hundreds of immigration cases and organized crime trials. My hand tightened on the phone. Say that again. Say what again? What you just said, about being too smart. Garrett's eyes flickered with awareness that he'd made a mistake. I don't know what... The accent, Garrett. When you're under pressure, when you're angry, you sound like someone I sent to prison. You're imagining things. I was about to respond when Garrett's phone rang again. This time he seemed to forget I was there. What? He answered harshly. Diana's voice came through the speaker, clearer than before. Garrett, I'm in the hotel bar. Rebecca's been calling your room for 30 minutes. She's getting suspicious. My blood went cold. Rebecca's calling his room? Garrett looked panicked. Diana, hang up. She thinks you went to get ice and cigarettes. How long does it take to... Hang up! But Diana kept talking. The front desk says you never checked in. Rebecca's asking questions. We need to abort. I stood slowly. Diana's at the plaza, where my daughter thinks you are. Nathan, I can explain. Rebecca thinks you're at the hotel, but you're here. Diana's at the hotel, pretending what exactly? Garrett ended the call and backed toward the door. You don't understand the situation. I understand perfectly. I moved between him and the exit. Rebecca's alone, believing her husband is getting ice. Instead, he's here trying to steal my house while his accomplice... Diana's not an accomplice. What is she, then? Silence. I dialed the Plaza Hotel from memory. Plaza concierge, please. Nathan, don't... This is Judge Nathan Sterling. I need to speak with Rebecca Sterlingstone in the bridal suite. One moment, sir. Garrett lunged for my phone. I stepped back, keeping it away from him. Judge Sterling? The concierge's voice was professional, concerned. I'm afraid Mrs. Stone isn't in the bridal suite. Where is she? She's in our lobby bar, sir. She seems distressed. She's been asking about her husband's whereabouts. Is there a woman with her? Tall, dark hair, possibly calling herself Diana? Yes, sir. She identified herself as Mrs. Stone's college friend. She's been very supportive, helping calm Mrs. Stone down. I felt sick. Put me through to the bar, please. Dad? Rebecca's voice came through the phone, tearful and confused. Dad, something's wrong. Garrett left to get cigarettes 2 hours ago and hasn't come back. Diana's here. She says she was in town for a conference and thought she'd surprise us, but... Rebecca, listen to me very carefully. Where exactly is Diana right now? She went to the ladies' room. Dad, I'm scared. This isn't like Garrett. He wouldn't just disappear on our wedding night. Sweetheart, I need you to go to your room and lock the door. Right now. Why? What's happening? Garrett made another grab for the phone. This time I held it high above my head. Rebecca, Garrett is here with me. At the house. What? That's impossible. He's getting cigarettes. He's been here for over an hour trying to get me to sign documents transferring the house to him. Silence on the other end. Then, that can't be right. It's very right. And Diana isn't your college friend. But she knew so much about me, about us. She knew about my nursing job, about Mom's death, because they've been planning this, Rebecca. Planning it for months. I heard Rebecca's sharp intake of breath. Planning what? I don't know yet. But I'm going to find out. I looked directly at Garrett. And you're going to stay in that room until I call you back. Dad, I'm scared. You should be. Lock the door. And don't let anyone in except hotel security. I hung up and faced Garrett, who looked trapped and desperate. 18 months, I said quietly. You've been planning this for 18 months. Meeting my daughter, earning her trust, learning about our family, our assets, our vulnerabilities. That's not... Diana knew details about Rebecca that only close friends would know, which means you've been feeding her information for over a year. Garrett's facade was completely gone now. The charming son-in-law had vanished, replaced by someone cold and calculating. You have no idea what you've stumbled into, he said. Then enlighten me. Some things are bigger than your little suburban life, Nathan. Bigger than your house, your money, your precious daughter. Such as? Such as paying debts that have been accumulating interest for 15 years. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. 15 years? The same time frame that had been nagging at my memory. What debts? I asked. The kind you created when you destroyed my family. My heart stopped. Your family? Garrett's smile was bitter, triumphant. Tell me, Judge Sterling, do you remember a case from 2009, United States versus Viktor Volkov? The name hit me like a sledgehammer. Viktor Volkov, Russian organized crime figure. Murder, racketeering, money laundering, life sentence, no possibility of parole. I stared at Garrett's face, seeing it now through the lens of 15 years and genetics. You're Victor's son. Garrett Volkov. I Americanized the name when I turned 18. Easier to blend in, easier to plan. Plan what? Justice. His phone rang again. This time he answered it on speaker, no longer caring about secrecy. Diana, we have a problem. The girl's locked herself in her room. Hotel security won't let me up. We need to move to Phase 2. What's Phase 2? I demanded. Garrett's eyes held 15 years of hatred. You destroyed my father's life, took away everything we had, left my mother to die in poverty while you sat in your mansion counting your money. Your father was a murderer. My father was a businessman who got caught in a system rigged against immigrants. Your father ordered the execution of 3 people, including a federal witness. Alleged executions, never proven. Proven enough for a jury to convict him. Garrett stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Do you know what it's like to watch your mother work 3 jobs to pay for appeals that never come? To see her cry herself to sleep every night for 10 years before cancer finally took her? I'm sorry for your loss, but... Sorry? Garrett laughed bitterly. You're about to be a lot more than sorry. My phone rang. Rebecca's number. Don't answer it, Garrett said. I answered anyway. Dad? Rebecca's voice was panicked. Diana's back. She's saying things about Garrett, about you, about some kind of plan. She has photos. The line went dead. Garrett smiled. Phase 2. I redialed Rebecca immediately. It went straight to voicemail. What did Diana do to my daughter? Nothing permanent, Garrett said casually. Yet. Dopo. If you hurt Rebecca. You'll what? Sentence me to life in prison like you did my father? Garrett pulled out his phone and showed me a text message. Diana's very good at her job. The message read, Package secured. Heading to location B. What's location B? Somewhere we can have a proper family discussion. I reached for my landline to call hotel security. Garrett was faster, yanking the cord from the wall. No more phone calls, Judge. Hotel security will find her. Will they? Diana checked out of her room 20 minutes ago, told the front desk she was helping her distraught friend get to a private medical facility for anxiety treatment. Garrett pocketed my cell phone. Amazing how official-looking documents can convince people to look the other way. What documents? Medical power of attorney. Diana's listed as Rebecca's emergency medical contact. Signed yesterday during the rehearsal dinner. My blood turned to ice. Rebecca never signed medical documents. Didn't she check your jacket pocket? Confused, I reached into my tuxedo jacket. There was a folded paper I didn't remember putting there. I opened it. A medical power of attorney form with Rebecca's signature. Witnessed and notarized. When did you... During the reception, while you were giving your toast about family traditions and protecting the ones we love. Garrett's smile was poison. Rebecca thought she was signing the guest book one more time. People sign so many things at weddings without really reading them. You son of a bitch. Now you're getting it. I heard car doors slamming outside. Through my window, I could see headlights in the driveway. Expecting company? Garrett asked. If you think you can kidnap a federal judge's daughter? I'm not kidnapping anyone. I'm reuniting a family. The front door opened without a key. They must have picked the lock. Footsteps crossed the marble foyer, heading toward my study. Diana Cross appeared in the doorway, supporting Rebecca, who looked dazed and unsteady. Rebecca! I started toward her. She's fine, Diana said crisply. Just a mild sedative to help with her anxiety attack. Perfectly legal with proper medical authorization. Rebecca's eyes focused on me with effort. Dad, what's happening? Why are we at the house? Sweetheart, you've been drugged. Medicated, Diana corrected. For panic disorder, standard treatment. I don't have panic disorder, Rebecca said weakly. The medical records Diana filed this afternoon say otherwise, Garrett said. History of depression, anxiety, recent traumatic stress from mother's death. Textbook case for emergency intervention. I stared at the three of them. Garrett Volkov, son of a murderer I'd sent to prison. Diana Cross, professional con artist. And my daughter, chemically restrained and legally helpless. What do you want? Justice, Garrett said. For 15 years I've planned this moment. Studied your life, your habits, your vulnerabilities. Your daughter was easy to meet. Trauma nurses work predictable shifts as eat at the same places, shop at the same stores. You stalked her. I courted her, patiently. 18 months of being the perfect boyfriend, the ideal son-in-law, the charming wedding guest everyone loved. Rebecca was fighting through the sedative, her voice gaining strength. You used me. I married you, legally. Binding ceremony, signed certificate, 200 witnesses. Garrett showed her his wedding ring. Till death do us part, remember? The marriage is fraud, I said. False identity, criminal intent. Prove it. Garrett Stone exists. Social security number, credit history, employment records, all legitimate. Built on a false foundation. Built carefully over 18 months. Diana's excellent at creating new identities. Diana spoke for the first time since entering. Victor taught us well before you destroyed him. I studied her face, seeing the family resemblance now. You're related to Victor, too. His niece. My father was Victor's brother, also destroyed by your justice system. Heart attack during the FBI raids. So this is what, a family revenge plot? This is balancing the scales, Garrett said. You took everything from us. Our father, our uncle, our family business, our respect in the community. You left us with nothing. I left you free to choose legitimate lives. Legitimate? Diana laughed bitterly. We were blacklisted from everything. No bank would give us accounts. No employer would hire us. No college would accept us. Your conviction didn't just destroy Victor. It destroyed 3 generations of Volkovs. Rebecca was becoming more alert. Dad, what are they talking about? What case? Your father, Garrett said, sentenced my father to life in prison for defending our family business against competitors who were trying to muscle in on our territory. And your family business was murder for hire, I said flatly. Alleged murder for hire. Never proven beyond manufactured evidence and paid witnesses. 3 federal juries said otherwise. 3 juries manipulated by a prosecutor who wanted to make his career and a judge who wanted to look tough on organized crime. Rebecca looked between us, understanding dawning. You married me to get revenge on my father? I married you because you were the key to everything he values. His daughter, his heir, his genetic legacy. Garrett touched her face almost tenderly. You're beautiful, intelligent, kind. All the things that make destroying you so much more meaningful. Don't touch her, I warned. Or what? You'll hold me in contempt of court? Garrett laughed. This isn't your courtroom, Judge. Out here, in the real world, I have all the power. Power to do what, exactly? To give you the same choice you gave my family 15 years ago. Lose everything you care about, or watch it be destroyed piece by piece. Diana opened her briefcase and pulled out more documents. Option 1. Sign over all your assets to Rebecca and Garrett. Your house, investments, pension, everything. Live quietly in assisted care while they manage your estate. And option 2? Rebecca has a terrible accident. Tragic medication interaction. So sorry for your loss. Diana's voice was clinical. Garrett inherits as her surviving spouse. You're devastated by grief, and you sign everything over to him anyway within 6 months. I felt rage building in my chest. Cold, judicial rage that had sent criminals to prison for decades. You're threatening to murder my daughter. I'm offering you the same mercy you showed Victor, Garrett said. A life sentence, with the possibility of good behavior. Except Victor was a convicted murderer. And you're a convicted destroyer of families. Rebecca struggled to stand straighter. Garrett, this is insane. You can't... I can do anything I want. I'm your husband. Your legal next of kin. Your medical decision-maker. He showed her the power of attorney documents. You signed away your rights yesterday at the rehearsal dinner. Those were guest book pages. According to these notarized documents, they were legal authorizations. I looked at the three of them, predators who'd spent nearly 2 years planning my destruction. But they'd made one crucial error. They thought being a federal judge for 45 years meant I was isolated from real-world consequences. They had no idea what connections I'd built, what resources I could access, what protocols existed for exactly this situation. I walked calmly to my desk and opened the bottom drawer. What are you doing? Diana demanded. I pulled out a small device that looked like a car remote. Activating a federal emergency beacon, I said. Standard issue for retired federal judges who've sentenced organized crime figures. Garrett stared at the device. That's impossible. Is it? After Victor's trial, I received death threats for 8 years. The FBI insisted on certain precautions. I pressed the red button. You just summoned every federal agent within 50 miles to this location, I told them. ETA, approximately 4 minutes. The room fell completely silent. Then Garrett began to laugh. You beautiful, arrogant fool, he said. Do you really think we didn't plan for that? Garrett's laughter echoed through my study like the sound of breaking glass. 15 years of planning, Nathan. 15 years. Did you really think we'd miss something as obvious as a federal emergency beacon? My confidence wavered. The signal's already sent. Is it? Diana pulled out a small electronic device, LED lights blinking green. Military-grade signal jammer. Your beacon just transmitted white noise. The device in my hand suddenly felt worthless. But 45 years on the federal bench had taught me never to show weakness to criminals. The FBI will notice when my signal goes dark. Will they? Because according to their monitoring system, you're sound asleep in bed. Your beacon's been transmitting normal status all night. Garrett walked to my bookshelf, running his fingers along the legal volumes. Amazing what former Soviet military technology can accomplish. Rebecca was fighting through the sedative, becoming more alert. Dad, what case? What did you do to his father? His father was Viktor Volkov, I said. Head of a Russian crime family operating out of Brighton Beach. Murder, extortion, human trafficking, alleged crimes, Garrett interrupted, based on testimony from criminals who cut deals to save themselves. Based on evidence that took 3 years to compile. Wiretaps, financial records, witness testimony, manufactured evidence. Your star witness was a federal informant who lied to reduce his own sentence. I turned to face him fully. Anton Petrov witnessed your father order the execution of Maria Santos, a federal witness preparing to testify about money laundering operations. Petrov was a drug addict who would have said anything for a reduced sentence. Petrov passed 3 lie detector tests. Polygraphs aren't admissible in federal court, as you well know. Garrett's voice carried legal precision that surprised me. His testimony was the only thing connecting my father to Maria Santos's murder. There were phone records, circumstantial. My father called hundreds of people. That didn't make him responsible for what happened to them. I studied Garrett's face, seeing intelligence behind the anger. You studied law. Full scholarship to Columbia. Graduated summa cum laude. Passed the New York bar on my first try. His smile was bitter. Turns out no law firm wants to hire the son of a convicted murderer. So you became a criminal instead. I became what your system forced me to become. Diana was watching our exchange carefully. Tell him about Elena, she said quietly. Garrett's expression hardened. My mother, Elena Volkova. She died while you were sleeping comfortably in this mansion, knowing you destroyed an innocent family. Your father wasn't innocent. My mother was. Garrett's composure cracked completely. She cleaned office buildings 16 hours a day to pay for appeals, lived in a studio apartment in Queens, ate one meal a day, worked herself to death trying to prove my father's innocence. I'm sorry for your loss, but that doesn't justify... Justify what? Taking back what you stole from us? You didn't just sentence my father, you confiscated everything we owned, our house, our cars, our savings accounts. You left a 15-year-old boy and his dying mother with nothing. Rebecca struggled to her feet. Garrett, whatever happened to your family, this isn't the answer. Isn't it? Your father destroyed my life. Now I destroy his. By destroying innocent people? By drugging me? By lying for 18 months? By giving him the same choice he gave us? Lose everything or watch it be taken piece by piece. I walked to my filing cabinet and pulled out a thick folder. You want to discuss your father's case? Fine. Let's review the evidence. I've read every page of that transcript, Garrett said. Have you? Because there are files you've never seen. Sealed documents that weren't part of the public record. I opened the folder, revealing dozens of photographs. Crime scene photos from the Santos murder. Garrett's face went pale. Those are classified. I'm showing them to family. You married my daughter, remember? I spread the photos across my desk. Maria Santos, 23 years old, beaten to death with a pipe wrench, found in a warehouse your father owned. Rebecca gasped, covering her mouth. Her last words to paramedics, I continued, pulling out an audio transcript. Victor said no witnesses, spoken clearly enough for the recording to be admissible evidence. That recording was ruled inadmissible, Diana protested. The recording itself was, but the paramedic's testimony about what he heard wasn't. I pulled out another document. Officer James Rodriguez, 17 years with NYPD, testified under oath that Maria Santos identified Victor Volkov as her attacker before dying. Garrett was staring at the photos, his face cycling through emotions I couldn't read. There's more, I said. Financial records showing Victor paid $50,000 to the warehouse security guard to erase surveillance footage. Phone records showing Victor called Maria Santos 23 times in the week before her murder, threatening her family if she testified. Those records were circumstantial, DNA evidence under Maria's fingernails, blood that matched Victor's type and genetic markers. I pulled out the lab reports. Your father didn't just order Maria's murder, he participated in it. Silence filled the room like smoke. Rebecca broke it first. Garrett, did you know about the evidence? The evidence was compromised. The investigation was biased. The whole case was... Did you know? Rebecca's voice was stronger now, the sedative wearing off. About the DNA? About the witness testimony? Garrett looked at her, then at the photographs spread across my desk. My father was protecting our family business. From a 23-year-old girl? From federal persecution that was destroying our community. Answer the question. Did you know your father was guilty? The words hung in the air like an indictment. Garrett stared at Rebecca for a long moment, then at me, then back at the crime scene photos. Yes, he said finally. I knew. Rebecca took a step back as if he'd struck her. You knew your father was a murderer, and you married me anyway? To get revenge on my father for doing his job? To get justice for what he did to my family. Justice? Rebecca's voice rose. You call lying to me for 18 months justice? You call drugging me and threatening to kill me justice? I call making him feel what we felt justice. What you felt? Your father murdered someone. Your father destroyed everything we had, our business, our reputation, our future, because your father was a criminal. Garrett's mask slipped completely. So what? So were half the people in our neighborhood. The only difference was they didn't get caught. The admission hung in the air like a confession. Diana looked shocked. Rebecca looked devastated, and I felt a cold satisfaction that justice was finally catching up to the Volkov family. There it is, I said quietly. The truth. Your father was guilty. You knew he was guilty, and you spent 15 years planning revenge against the judge who did his job. I spent 15 years planning to restore my family's honor. Honor? Rebecca laughed bitterly. What honor? You're a liar, a con artist, and now a kidnapper. I'm a son seeking justice for his father. You're a criminal following in his footsteps. Garrett backhanded Rebecca across the face. The sound echoed through the room like a gunshot. I moved toward him, but Diana stepped between us, holding a gun I hadn't seen her draw. Nobody moves, she said calmly. Rebecca held her hand to her cheek, staring at Garrett in shock. You hit me. You wouldn't stop talking. I'm your wife. You're a means to an end. Nothing more. I looked at this man who'd infiltrated my family, manipulated my daughter, and now stood revealed as exactly what his father had been, a violent criminal who saw other people as obstacles to his desires. Rebecca, I said quietly, now you see who you really married. But Rebecca was looking at something else, the family photos on my desk that had been knocked askew during Garrett's violent outburst. Wait, she said slowly, that picture, from your retirement party. She pointed to a framed photograph of my judicial retirement ceremony. In the background, visible among the crowd of court personnel and family members, was a young man in a dark suit, a young man who looked exactly like Garrett Volkov. You were there, Rebecca said in wonder, at Dad's retirement party, 3 years ago. I picked up the photograph, studying it closely. The face was unmistakable. You've been watching us for 3 years, I said. Garrett's expression confirmed it. Longer than that. How much longer? Since the day my mother died, 7 years ago. I swore on her grave that I would destroy you the same way you destroyed us. 7 years? The timeline was staggering. You've been planning this for 7 years? Planning, studying, preparing, learning everything about your family, your routines, your vulnerabilities. Garrett's voice carried a pride that made my skin crawl. I knew where Rebecca worked before I ever accidentally met her at that coffee shop. I knew her schedule, her friends, her favorite places. I knew exactly how to become the perfect man for her. Rebecca was crying now, understanding the full scope of the deception. Everything, she whispered. Every conversation, every date, every moment we shared, it was all fake. Not fake, carefully planned. That's the same thing. No, Rebecca. Fake would have been easy. This required real commitment, real sacrifice. Do you have any idea how difficult it was to pretend to love you for 18 months? The cruelty of that statement hit Rebecca like a physical blow. She sank into a chair, overwhelmed. But something in Garrett's choice of words caught my attention. Pretend to love her, I repeated. Interesting phrasing. What's interesting about it? Most sociopaths would say they felt nothing. But you said pretend, which suggests you actually did feel something. Garrett's jaw tightened. I felt nothing. Did you? Because 18 months is a long time to maintain a performance, especially with someone as perceptive as Rebecca. I'm very good at my job. Are you? Because right now you look like a man who's trying to convince himself as much as us. Diana was watching this exchange with growing alarm. Garrett, we need to finish this. But I pressed on, seeing uncertainty in Garrett's eyes for the first time. 7 years of planning, 3 years of surveillance. 18 months of intimate deception. That's dedication beyond simple revenge. Shut up. That's obsession, and obsession comes from somewhere deeper than anger. I said shut up. It comes from connection, from recognizing something in someone else that... Shut up! Garrett lunged across the room toward me. As he moved, his phone slipped from his pocket and skidded across the hardwood floor. Rebecca, moving faster than any of us expected, dove for the phone, and what she saw on the screen changed everything again. Rebecca stared at Garrett's phone screen, her face cycling through confusion, recognition, and horror. There are pictures, she said quietly, hundreds of pictures, of me, dating back years. Diana and Garrett exchanged a panicked look. What kind of pictures? I demanded. Walking to work, having lunch with friends, at the grocery store, at Mom's funeral, at... Rebecca's voice broke. At our apartment, inside our apartment, sleeping. I felt a cold fury unlike anything in 45 years of judicial service. You've been stalking her for years. I was gathering intelligence. You were committing federal crimes, stalking, harassment, unlawful surveillance. I was planning the perfect approach. Rebecca scrolled through the phone with shaking hands. There are videos, audio recordings, conversations I had with friends about private things. How long? I asked Garrett. How long were you watching her? Since she started working at Mount Sinai, 4 years ago. 4 years. The scope was staggering. You've been stalking my daughter for 4 years. I needed to know everything about her to make the approach convincing. You needed to know what underwear she wore, what she talked about with her girlfriends, what she looked like sleeping. Diana stepped forward, gun still trained on me. We need to end this conversation. But Rebecca had found something else on the phone. There are other women. Other photos? What other women? I asked. Jennifer Morrison in Seattle, Katie Walsh in Denver, Sarah Chen in Miami. Rebecca's voice was hollow with understanding. They all look like me. Garrett went completely still. You've done this before, Rebecca said. Multiple times. Different cities, different women, but the same pattern. I felt pieces clicking into place. How many families have you destroyed, Garrett? This is different. This was always about you. How many? My voice carried 45 years of judicial authority. Silence. Diana answered instead. 12 families over 7 years. We've been very successful. Successful at what? Identity theft, estate fraud, marriage fraud. The Volkov family business has evolved with the times. Rebecca looked at the photos of other women, her face pale with shock. You married them? All of them? Temporarily, until we could access their family assets. What happened to them afterward? Another silence that spoke volumes. I understood completely now. You killed them. We provided closure, Diana said clinically. Tragic accidents, medical emergencies, suicides during mental health crises. Very sad, but these things happen. Rebecca dropped the phone like it was on fire. You're serial killers. We're entrepreneurs who found a profitable niche, Garrett corrected. Why? Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper. Why did you choose me? Because your father destroyed my family. You were supposed to be special. The final target that would give my father's death meaning. Your father's not dead. He's serving life in federal prison. Same thing. I looked at Garrett Volkov, not the charming man who'd married my daughter, but the predator who'd spent 7 years murdering innocent women to build up to this moment. Federal prison is exactly where you belong, I said. Is it? Because right now, I'm holding all the cards. Garrett nodded to Diana, who raised her gun higher. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign those property transfer documents. Then Rebecca's going to have a tragic medication reaction to her anxiety treatment. And then I inherit everything as her grieving widower. Your house, your investments, your federal pension, everything you've built over 45 years becomes mine. No, Rebecca said firmly. Everyone turned to look at her. I said no. Rebecca stood up, steadier now despite the sedative. I won't let you hurt my father. You don't have a choice. Don't I? Rebecca pulled something from her jacket, a small recording device I hadn't noticed. I've been recording this conversation for the past 20 minutes. Garrett's face went white. That's impossible. Trauma nurses carry voice recorders for shift notes. I turned it on when you hit me. Rebecca held up the device. Everything you've said about the murders, about the other women, about planning to kill me, it's all recorded. Diana swung her gun toward Rebecca. Give me that device. No. I'll shoot you right now. Then you'll have a murder scene to explain, with my father as a witness and audio evidence of your confession. I felt pride swelling in my chest. Rebecca had inherited more than Eleanor's looks. She'd inherited a prosecutor's instincts. Besides, Rebecca continued, it doesn't matter if you take this recorder. Why not? Because it's been streaming to cloud storage for the past 20 minutes. Even if you destroy it, the recording still exists. Garrett stared at her in disbelief. You're lying. Am I? Check your phone. See if there's any wireless activity. Garrett bent to retrieve his phone from where Rebecca had dropped it. His face went pale as he checked the settings. There's an active data stream. To my hospital's cloud server, along with GPS location data and real-time audio. Rebecca smiled for the first time all evening. The system's designed to help nurses document abuse cases. If I don't check in every hour, it automatically alerts hospital security and law enforcement. Diana lowered her gun slightly. When did you last check in? 43 minutes ago. I have 17 minutes before Mount Sinai calls the police. The room fell completely silent, except for the grandfather clock ticking in the corner. Of course, I said quietly. They don't need to wait 17 minutes. What do you mean? Diana asked. I walked to the window and pointed outside. Red and blue lights were visible through the trees, approaching fast but with sirens off. The signal jammer you're so proud of, it only blocks outgoing transmissions from my beacon. It doesn't block incoming cellular data or GPS tracking. Garrett looked at his phone in horror. The cloud stream has been pinging Rebecca's location to hospital security for the past 20 minutes. Mount Sinai has a protocol for staff members who activate emergency recording systems. They immediately notify federal authorities if a judge's family member is involved. Diana ran to the window. There are at least 6 vehicles out there. FBI, ATF, and local police, I confirmed. The Volkov investigation never really closed. The Bureau's been tracking your activities across 12 states, waiting for you to make exactly this kind of mistake. Garrett's phone buzzed with an incoming call. The caller ID showed FBI, Agent Rodriguez. Agent Rodriguez, I said to Rebecca. That's the same officer who testified about Maria Santos's final words. He's been working the Volkov case for 15 years. Car doors slammed outside. Heavy footsteps approached the house. You have about 30 seconds to decide how you want this to end, I told Garrett and Diana. Surrender peacefully or add resisting arrest and assaulting federal officers to your list of charges. Diana looked at Garrett desperately. We can still... It's over, Garrett said quietly. It's been over since Rebecca started recording. The front door burst open with the sound of splintering wood. FBI! Everyone on the ground! Agent Rodriguez appeared in my study doorway, flanked by 6 tactical officers in full gear. Judge Sterling, are you injured? We're fine, I said, putting my arm around Rebecca. These are the suspects you've been tracking. Diana dropped her weapon immediately. Garrett raised his hands slowly, his face resigned. Garrett Volkov and Diana Cross, Agent Rodriguez said, you're under arrest for federal racketeering, murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy charges spanning 7 states. As they were handcuffed, Garrett looked at me one last time. This doesn't bring back the women I killed, he said, or your destroyed innocence. No, I agreed, but it prevents you from destroying anyone else. Just like your father, Rebecca added as they led him away. A criminal who thought he was above the law. Garrett Volkov disappeared into federal custody, ending a 7-year killing spree that had begun with a son's misguided quest for revenge and ended with justice for 13 families, including mine. 6 weeks later, I sat in federal district court watching Garrett Volkov and Diana Cross receive their sentences. The courtroom was packed with families of their victims, 12 women whose lives had been cut short by a carefully orchestrated marriage fraud scheme. Judge Patricia Martinez, my former colleague, delivered the verdicts with clinical precision. Garrett Volkov, also known as Garrett Stone, this court sentences you to life imprisonment without possibility of parole for 12 counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, and fraud. You will serve this sentence in ADX Florence, the same facility where your father is currently incarcerated. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the courtroom. Diana Cross, this court sentences you to 60 years in federal prison for conspiracy charges, accessory to murder, and racketeering. You will be eligible for parole in 40 years. Rebecca sat beside me, her hands steady in mine. 6 weeks of intensive therapy had helped her process the trauma, but she was stronger than I had expected, stronger than Garrett had calculated when he chose her as his target. How does it feel? She asked as we watched them being led away in shackles. Like justice, I said. Finally. Agent Rodriguez approached our bench. Judge Sterling, I wanted to give you an update on the investigation. What did you find? Financial records showing the Volkov operation netted over $42 million across 7 years. They were meticulous record keepers. We've been able to trace assets and provide restitution to victim families. Any other accomplices? 3 additional arrests in Brighton Beach. The operation was larger than we initially thought, but Garrett and Diana were the primary operators. Rodriguez paused. We also found something interesting in Garrett's personal effects. What? A journal documenting his surveillance of Rebecca dating back 4 years. But Judge, the entries from the last 6 months suggest his feelings toward her became complicated. Rebecca looked up sharply. What do you mean? He wrote extensively about admiring her compassion, her intelligence, her dedication to helping patients. The final entries suggest he was struggling with genuine attachment. You mean he actually fell in love with her? I asked. It's possible. The psychological profile suggests he experienced internal conflict between his revenge mission and unexpected emotional connection. Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. Does that change anything? Not legally, Rodriguez said. Murder is murder regardless of the perpetrator's emotional state. I meant personally. I looked at my daughter, seeing wisdom beyond her 29 years. What do you think? I think broken people often recognize good things when they see them, but recognition isn't the same as redemption. She stood up as the courtroom began to empty. Garrett made his choices. Every day for 7 years, he chose violence over healing. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras and questions. Rebecca handled them with grace, speaking briefly about victim advocacy and the importance of recognizing manipulation in relationships. Any regrets about the marriage? One reporter asked. I regret that 13 families lost loved ones to senseless violence, Rebecca said. I regret that a 15-year-old boy chose revenge over rebuilding his life, but I don't regret stopping him before he hurt anyone else. What's next for you? I'm returning to nursing. Trauma patients need advocates who understand that healing is possible, even after the worst experiences. 3 months later, Rebecca had moved back into her childhood bedroom while she decided on her next steps. The house felt alive again, not with the artificial perfection Garrett had brought to our family dinners, but with genuine connection between people who'd survived something terrible together. Dad, Rebecca said one evening as we sat in my study, do you think Mom would be proud of how we handled this? I looked at Eleanor's photograph on my desk, the same photo Garrett had studied during his surveillance, learning our family's vulnerabilities. Your mother always said the measure of a person isn't what happens to them, but how they respond to what happens. And how did we respond? With courage, intelligence, and justice. Exactly what she would have done. Rebecca smiled, the first completely unguarded smile I'd seen since her wedding night. I'm thinking of going back to school, she said. Maybe law school. Become a prosecutor. Following the family tradition? Creating a new one where we protect people instead of just punishing criminals after the fact. I felt pride swelling in my chest. Eleanor would indeed be proud. Law school applications are due in January, I said. I know, I already started the paperwork. Outside, autumn was settling over Scarsdale. The same trees where Garrett had hidden cameras to document our family's routines were now simply trees again, innocent of surveillance or manipulation. Justice had been served. My family was safe, and the Volkov legacy of violence had finally ended where it began, in federal court, with a life sentence that would ensure no more families would suffer what we'd endured. Some stories end with forgiveness. This one ended with accountability. And sometimes, that's exactly what justice looks like. 1 year later, Rebecca passed the LSAT with scores that guaranteed admission to any law school in the country. She chose Columbia, the same school where Garrett Volkov had studied law, before choosing a different path. I want to reclaim that space, she told me, turn his legacy into something better. The house had been thoroughly swept for surveillance equipment. The FBI found 43 hidden cameras and listening devices that Garrett had installed over 2 years of visiting as my son-in-law. Every room had been violated, every private moment recorded. But we didn't move. Instead, we renovated. This is our home, Rebecca said, as contractors removed walls and rebuilt spaces. We're not letting criminals drive us away from 3 generations of family history. The new security system was military grade. The new locks required biometric scanning. The new protocols included background checks that went deeper than any private investigator could reach. Trust but verify became our family motto. Rebecca started dating again, carefully. Every potential partner underwent scrutiny that would make the Secret Service proud. Not because we were paranoid, but because we understood that predators often look like princes. Dad, do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd been more suspicious from the beginning? She asked one evening. No, I said honestly, because suspicion without cause isn't safety. It's prison. Garrett chose deception. We chose love. The fact that he betrayed that love says nothing about us and everything about him. But 12 other women? 12 other women loved someone they thought was real. Their deaths weren't caused by their trust. They were caused by his choice to murder them. Rebecca nodded, understanding the distinction that many victims' families struggle with. 6 months later, she was accepted to Columbia Law School with a full scholarship. Her personal statement focused on victim advocacy and family protection law. I want to create legal frameworks that make it harder for people like Garrett to exploit family relationships, she explained. Mandatory background checks for marriage licenses, cooling off periods for major asset transfers between new spouses, better protection for elderly family members. On the anniversary of her wedding, or what she now called Escape Day, we held a small ceremony, not to celebrate the pain, but to mark survival and renewal. What did we learn? I asked as we stood in the garden where Garrett had proposed with calculated romantic precision. We learned that evil often wears a perfect face, Rebecca said, but we also learned that good people can recognize it, fight it, and survive it. She was right. The Volkov family had tried to destroy us and failed. We were still here, still strong, still protecting each other, and that, ultimately, was their real defeat. If this story resonates with you, please share it, because somewhere out there, another family might be facing their own Garrett Volkov, and they need to know that survival, justice, and healing are all possible, even after the worst betrayal imaginable.